Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a stunning and unprecedented move, the Canadian government has firmly rejected a $20 billion ultimatum issued by President Trump, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles on both sides of the border. The demand, which arrived with little warning, was met with immediate resistance in Ottawa, where leaders saw it as an attack on their nation's autonomy and a challenge to the long-standing spirit of cooperation between the two countries. By refusing the ultimatum, Canada has shattered the United States-Canada Submarine Pact, a cornerstone of North American defense for decades. The abrupt collapse of this agreement has sent ripples far beyond the continent, raising alarms among global security analysts and military strategists who now question the stability of alliances once thought unbreakable. The demand, framed by Washington as a retroactive payment for shared defense costs, was interpreted in Ottawa as a direct affront to Canadian sovereignty and dignity. Canadian officials argued that such a request undermined decades of mutual trust and partnership, and was not a negotiation tactic, but rather a provocation that could not be ignored. The public response was swift, with protests erupting outside government buildings and heated debates dominating national headlines. This rupture marks a critical test for the Western Alliance, as the world's longest undefended border, once a symbol of peace and friendship, now stands as a stark reminder of deepening political division. The diplomatic fallout has left both nations scrambling to reassure their citizens and allies, while the future of cross-border cooperation hangs in the balance. The collapse of trust between these two NATO allies signals a profound and unsettling shift in the global order. As world leaders and security experts debate the implications, urgent questions arise about the future of North American defense, the reliability of international alliances, and the potential for further instability in an already volatile world. To truly understand the magnitude of this crisis, we must look back at the deep roots of the U.S. Canada relationship, a partnership forged through war, peace, and shared values, now facing its greatest test in generations. The U.S. Canada Defense Partnership, forged in World War II with the Ogdensburg Agreement, has been a model of military integration for over 80 years. NORAD, established in 1958, exemplifies this unique cooperation, with American and Canadian personnel working side by side to defend North American airspace. Their militaries have trained and fought together from the Arctic to Afghanistan, operating as a near-seamless force. Disagreements, like Canada's refusal to join the 2003 Iraq invasion, were always managed quietly, within a framework of mutual respect. But the current public ultimatum is unprecedented, turning family disputes into a public crisis. The alliance now faces its greatest test yet. The U.S. and Canada share the world's largest trading partnership, built on decades of free trade agreements like NAFTA and USMCA. Their economies are deeply intertwined. Millions of jobs and entire industries depend on the free flow of goods across the border. Yet, trade disputes over lumber, dairy, and steel have always simmered beneath the surface, usually resolved through established rules. President Trump's return to office brought a shift. Tariffs, threats, and public ultimatums replaced quiet negotiation. The result? A manageable friction has escalated into an existential crisis for the partnership. The rules-based order is giving way to brinkmanship. The stakes have never been higher. The diplomatic crisis exploded onto the world stage when President Trump, in a dramatic and highly publicized address, issued an unprecedented demand: $20 billion from Canada to fund a new continental security fund. The announcement, delivered with characteristic bravado, sent shockwaves through both nations and immediately dominated headlines across North America and beyond. Trump's ultimatum was clear. If Canada refused to pay, the United States would terminate all joint defense projects, unraveling decades of military cooperation and trust. The threat was not just financial. It struck at the very core of the long-standing alliance between the two countries. The demand was delivered not through the usual back channels of diplomacy, but blasted out on social media and repeated in press conferences. This public approach blindsided Canadian officials, leaving Ottawa scrambling to respond while the world watched. The humiliation was palpable, as Canada's leaders were forced to react in real time under the glare of international scrutiny. At the heart of the standoff was a sensitive joint submarine pact designed to counter growing Russian and Chinese military activity in the rapidly thawing Arctic. The pact represented years of careful negotiation and was seen as vital to both nations' security interests in the region. For Canada, Trump's ultimatum was more than a financial demand. It was a direct challenge to national sovereignty and a test of the country's resolve. For the United States, it was a bold move to assert dominance and gauge the strength of its northern allies' commitment. Prime Minister Carney's government now faced an impossible dilemma: capitulate to American pressure and risk losing face at home and abroad, or refuse and gamble with the nation's security and economic stability. The stakes could not have been higher. Emergency meetings in Ottawa stretched late into the night as cabinet ministers and advisors weighed every possible outcome. The gravity of the moment was unmistakable, with the fate of the alliance and perhaps the security of the continent hanging in the balance. Around the globe, governments and citizens alike watched anxiously as the clock ticked down, aware that the decisions made in the coming hours could reshape the future of North American security and diplomacy. On September 22nd, Prime Minister Carney addressed the nation, firmly rejecting Trump's ultimatum. "Canada is a sovereign nation. We do not respond to ultimatums." He appealed to shared history, insisting that partnership must be based on respect, not coercion. The response united Canadians across party lines, praised as a necessary stand for sovereignty despite looming risks. In Washington, Trump's reaction was immediate and furious. "The Submarine Pact is dead. There will be consequences." The White House ordered an end to all submarine cooperation and began drafting punitive economic measures. Diplomatic bridges were not just burned, they were obliterated. Canada's defiance marked a turning point in its national identity. The U.S. Canada relationship entered uncharted territory. The collapse of the Submarine Pact leaves a dangerous gap in North American Arctic defense. Canada loses its chance to modernize its aging submarine fleet, undermining its ability to patrol its vast northern waters. The U.S. now faces the burden of Arctic security alone, stretching its resources thin as Russia and China expand their presence. The void is a gift to adversaries, who see Western resolve faltering. Military analysts warn this rift could embolden Moscow and Beijing to challenge international norms in the Arctic. The end of the pact is more than a procurement failure. It's a seismic shift in the region's balance of power. The Arctic may become the next great power flashpoint. The diplomatic rupture threatens to ignite a trade war, with Trump vowing sweeping tariffs and Canada promising retaliation. Integrated supply chains are at risk, endangering millions of jobs and pushing both economies toward recession. U.S. consumers face higher prices. Canadian industries brace for crisis. Politically, Carney's defiance boosts his popularity at home, while Trump's hardline stance energizes his base but risks backlash in key states. Socially, the crisis is straining the personal and cultural ties that have long united the two countries. Border tensions are rising, and the world's longest undefended border is now marked by suspicion. The fallout is economic, political, and deeply personal. The cost of this standoff is only beginning to be felt. Defense experts are sounding the alarm, calling this the gravest rupture in North American security ties since the War of 1812. The scale of the fallout, they say, is unprecedented in modern times, with ripple effects that could reshape the continent's defense landscape for years to come. Many warn that the trust painstakingly built over decades has been shattered in a matter of weeks, leaving both nations more vulnerable than ever before. The collapse of the Submarine Pact, once hailed as a cornerstone of Western security, is now seen as a self-inflicted wound. Analysts argue that this breakdown not only weakens collective defense, but also emboldens adversaries who see division as an opportunity. The sense of betrayal runs deep, with some experts comparing the current climate to the darkest days of Cold War suspicion. Economists, meanwhile, are raising red flags about the economic consequences. They predict that a full-blown trade war would devastate key sectors on both sides of the border, unraveling intricate supply chains that have taken decades to build. The automotive, technology, and agricultural industries are particularly at risk, with potential losses running into the billions. The human cost could be staggering, with hundreds of thousands of jobs on the line. Entire communities that rely on cross-border trade may face economic ruin, and the social fabric of towns and cities could be torn apart by prolonged unemployment and uncertainty. Former diplomats, many of whom spent their careers nurturing the alliance, lament the abandonment of quiet, behind-the-scenes statecraft. They argue that the recent turn toward public threats and ultimatums has left Canada with little choice but to refuse, further deepening the rift. The era of discreet negotiation has given way to a climate of open confrontation, making compromise far more difficult. Some warn that this new approach could set a dangerous precedent for future disputes, eroding the diplomatic norms that have long underpinned North American relations. Rebuilding trust, experts agree, will be a long and arduous process, one that could take years, if not an entire generation. The path forward is uncertain, and both sides will need to show patience, humility, and a willingness to listen if they hope to restore what has been lost. Political scientists suggest that this crisis may ultimately force Canada to rethink its place in the world. There is growing talk of diversifying trade and foreign policy, reducing the country's reliance on the United States, and seeking new partnerships in Europe, Asia, and beyond. Such a shift would mark a profound change in Canada's international strategy, but it would not come easily. Building new alliances and trade relationships is a complex, costly, and time-consuming endeavor. The realignment would require not only economic adjustments, but also a fundamental rethinking of national priorities and identity. Policymakers warn that the transition could be fraught with setbacks and unexpected challenges. For now, Canada is waking up to the risks of living next to an unpredictable giant. The sense of security that once came from a close partnership is now tinged with anxiety and doubt. The alliance that once anchored North America, providing stability and prosperity, is now in question. Its future will depend on the choices made in the coming months and years. As the world watches closely, the next chapter in this fractured alliance remains unwritten, and its outcome will shape the global order for generations to come. North America stands at a crossroads, an alliance fractured, a trade war looming, and a critical defense gap exposed. This crisis is the result of political choices that replaced partnership with pressure. The challenge now is to rediscover common ground and rebuild trust. Leadership, dialogue, and citizen engagement are essential to move forward. Americans and Canadians must look past rhetoric and remember their shared history. The future is unwritten. This could be a bitter divorce or a wake-up call for renewal. The stakes are too high for complacency. The world is watching to see which path we choose.